It's about the I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State. Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game.
Ground ball, right side. Cabrera will cut it off. Galarraga covers. He's out. No, he's safe.
Phoenix has the foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
DeBrincat gets it back to Gossett. Barron across now. King.
Save Raymond. They score! Raymond!
James Bond drops him and throw, and it's caught by St. Brown for a first down.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. And right at the very moment that I go live, we have breaking news. And I finally get to use this sound effect. We have breaking news. DeAndre Hopkins, the 5-time All-Pro wide receiver, has signed with the Baltimore Ravens. That ended very anticlimactically. I wish there was a way for it to fade out. There's not really an option on the soundboard. I don't have any comment on that because I just think it's funny that he's still getting jobs. But, you have a big name, you're going to get signed. But welcome one, welcome all. This is the most exciting time, I think, in the NFL. Not because any games are happening, but because everybody is winning the offseason. And one of the things that I emphasize on this show, and I try to emphasize when I talk to people, is that winning the offseason does not get you a banner. It does not get you a trophy. It does not get you into the Hall of Fame. All it does is give you and your team hope. And hope can be a very beautiful thing. Hope is a wonderful, people should generally speaking have hope. But we got to relax. And sometimes teams do not want to relax. They want to do stupid things. And we will talk about the very teams that are doing stupid things. So, I'm not really sure how I want to go about this because, unfortunately, I'm very stupid. And I did not arrange the moves by position. I did this last year, and I should have done it this year. But we're going to try to do this quarterbacks first. And we're going to start... Yeah, should I do quarterbacks first, or should I do... It's a great question. Should I do the Lions stuff? You know what? We'll front load it with the Lions. We'll do that. Because there's a lot more non-Lions stuff that I got to talk about. So we'll front load it with the Lions so far, because that's the primary interest I have in all of this. So the Lions start their offseason. They made 3, I wouldn't say major, but 3 moves so far. First things first, Derek Barnes gets a 3-year extension. Derek Barnes was out all of last year due to injury, but a couple of years back, 2023, 2024 season, he had pretty much his coming out season. He had a game-winning interception in the divisional round in the playoffs. One of the earlier Brad Holmes draft pick selections adds to a pretty deep linebacker room for the Lions. I like the signing. I like Derek Barnes. If he could stay healthy, he's definitely going to be useful. I mean, definitely a lot more there than Pat O'Connor or whoever the heck we had out there, Trevor Nowatzki, whatever. Definitely a lot more there. No disrespect to those guys. They played as well as they could have, which doesn't say much. But Derek Barnes gets a 3-year extension, so Brad Holmes immediately showing he's going to reinvest in the defense. Then the move that I was a little confused by, and I think most people were confused by it, Marcus Davenport gets re-signed to a 1-year deal, not worth a whole lot of money. So, you're not worried about the term or the actual cap space he's taking up. But Marcus Davenport, I think he played 1 or 2 games last year, then was out for the season. He really has not showed an ability to stay healthy. Obviously not stay healthy with us. He didn't show that ability in Minnesota. He didn't even really show that ability in New Orleans. But clearly, Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, the rest of the coaching staff, they clearly see something in him. They clearly seem to think that he's got something left. We'll see, but I have my doubts. Now, the main move that I got to talk about here, and then we'll talk about, I guess, how this characterizes the rest of it all. The Lions signed DJ Reed. So they invest in the secondary. That's their big, what you might say, the splash move, at least so far. 3 years, $48 million. They move on from Carlton Davis, who goes to sign with the Patriots for a 3-year, $60 million deal. So obviously, Carlton Davis's asking price of $60 million, 3 years. No, that was not in Brad Holmes' table, or it was not something we wanted. So we got, a 3rd-round pick and Carlton Davis. Okay, I could live with that. It was a good year. I liked Carlton Davis. Obviously, the injury really, set us back. So we'll see if he ends up staying healthy with New England, but he really hadn't shown, even back when he was with Tampa, he really hadn't shown an ability to stay healthy for a full 17-game slate. But when he was healthy, he was definitely one of the better pieces on the defense. So he's going to be missed in that regard. But DJ Reed, I think it's pretty much a wash. I think you're pretty much flipping, quality corner for quality corner. You might say that they have much more of a belief in DJ Reed in so much as they invest 3 years now in him. So your secondary, I've been thinking about this. Your secondary now is basically Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw, DJ Reed, Amik Robertson, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph. That's not bad. I can live with that. Terrion Arnold, I think he gets a little bit of a bad rep in so much as compared to other rookies, the Cooper DeJeans of the world, he didn't perform at that level. Now, it should be noted that the defensive line that he was working with was dead. The best player on the defense, Aiden Hutchinson, was out for the most of the year. But Terrion Arnold still played decently well. He wasn't amazing. I know the Pro Football Focus, PFF, they didn't really grade him out that high. Just watching the games, there was never a lot of moments where I was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Terrion Arnold, letting a guy, totally destroy him kind of thing. Obviously, he needs to grow, but I'm not upset about it. So your secondary to me seems secure. Okay. Here's the thing. The move that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, and maybe we'll see how it ends up panning out. Lions are not keeping Zadarius Smith. They're releasing Zadarius Smith. Apparently, whatever it is that he was asking for is too much. Now, he hasn't been signed by anybody as of yet. So technically speaking, he's still out there and very well could come back in, as free agency, as the days go by. But I really thought, given the, willingness to go out and trade for him, given that, after Aiden Hutchinson went down, he's probably your best pass rusher. I figured you might have had a similar kind of pass rush group that Cleveland had with Myles Garrett on one end and Zadarius Smith on the other. Evidently, that was not what Brad Holmes had in mind. So now I sit here, I should say, just sort of wondering what exactly is the next, shoe to drop in terms of a move on the defensive side. Because, well, we'll get to it in a little bit. Myles Garrett already re-signed. Max Crosby already re-signed. Josh Sweat went and signed with Arizona. Harold Landry, I'm just saying, obviously the elephant in the room that I'm avoiding mentioning by name is Trey Hendrickson. So Trey Hendrickson, one of the things that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, he actually played for New Orleans while Dan Campbell was there. And I think Aaron Glenn was there, but obviously Aaron Glenn no longer with the team. But there might already be something of a relationship there. I'm sure that Brad Holmes has asked him about it. Now, to be fair, though, when he was with the Saints, he was not the player that he is with the Bengals. The Bengals, he's always been a Pro Bowl caliber player. Last year, he was an All-Pro. He led the league in sacks. Now, granted, Aiden Hutchinson goes down. Does he still lead the league in sacks? If Hutchinson is healthy all year? I don't know, but he does. Either way, the thing about Hendrickson is he's asking for money, and the Bengals are allowing him to, look into getting traded. But the thing is, if the Bengals don't want to make the trade, if whatever the other team is offering, whether it's the Lions or any of these other teams, they're not going to take it. So my thing is, I think you need to put a reasonable offer out there for Hendrickson. Not, don't go ahead and drop 3 first-round picks and, Brian Branch for Trey Hendrickson. Don't do that. That's stupid. Okay? Like, he's a good player. He's not I wouldn't even support that if it was Myles Garrett. That's absurd. But there certainly could be an offer that might be worth taking. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really trust the front office of Cincinnati right now. They're franchise tagging T. Higgins. The guy can't escape. They still have to pay Jamar Chase. They're kind of in a tough spot right now. And I think if you make the right offer, you might push it. Now, ultimately, my rational brain takes over and says, okay, if Trey Hendrickson is this good, in what world would Cincinnati not want insane amounts of picks or players for him? If I'm the GM of the Cincinnati Bengals and I'm offered a second-round pick and a third-round pick for Trey Hendrickson, I'm hanging up the phone. Now, if Brad Holmes can somehow trick the general manager into thinking these second and third round picks, look, they're going to be great, they're going to be amazing, and maybe even throw in a Josh Pascal and say, look, Pascal, he hasn't really worked out for us, but maybe you guys can develop. You obviously developed Hendrickson, so maybe you can develop Pascal. Maybe you do something like that, and okay, then if the GM for the Bengals becomes the GM for the Dallas Mavericks, then sure. But realistically, it's not fantasy football. It's not Madden. You can't just, and I appreciate that the talking heads in the media and that people in general are talking about it and at least having the discussion. But reasonably, in the event that we trade for him, we're also going to have to pay him. And I'm not saying that's, whatever. You'll figure it out. I'm never concerned about paying a player. If he's a good enough player, I don't care how much you pay him. It doesn't really matter to me. You pay the good player and you don't play the bad players, or you don't pay the bad players. That's how it works. So if you sign a good player for a lot of money, I don't care. It's all a part of the business of it. With all of that being said, the offseason is still very early on. I mean, last year, around this time, I remember people being very confused because the only major move the Lions had made was trading for Carlton Davis. And oh my gosh, what are we doing? And then, or Marcus Davenport. And oh my gosh, what are we doing? Brad Holmes has lost his mind. Why isn't he trading for X? Why isn't he signing Z? You just have to give it a little bit of time. And I'm not going to grade an offseason based on 2 days of free agency. Let me see what happens in the draft. Let me see what happens in the rest of the offseason. Let me see what happens once we get to training camp and maybe some guys get hurt or maybe, guys start going off. Maybe Levi Onwuzurike takes another step forward. I don't even know if he's going to stay with the team, but you get what I mean. Guys come out of nowhere. And ultimately, like I said at the start of the show, the winners of the offseason, they don't get to raise banners necessarily. Sometimes they do. They don't get to hold trophies. Sometimes they do. But it's not because they win the offseason. I mean, I've gone through now. It's going to be year 2 of the Bears winning the offseason. And I have yet to see the Bears win anything in the regular season. So, overall, I'm moderately, content with the moves made so far. I like Derek Barnes. Glad they kept it along. I'm glad that they seem to have a certain amount of trust in him as that linebacker room depth. I like DJ Reed. Again, it secures that secondary for me. Makes it a much tougher unit. Hopefully we don't have to see Kindle Vildor for a 3rd year in a row. And Marcus Davenport, look, it's a 1-year deal. Prove it. If you're a valuable player, go off. Basically, go out and be a really good player for us. That would be super. It would really be nice to have that guy opposite of Hutch that can have an impact. So we'll see. Either way, a decent start to the offseason. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to yell about it. So if you see me glancing, it's because the Pistons are playing right now. They got the Wizards right now. They're up 17-10. Now, this is actually a pretty important game. They got a couple of games here in a row, both against the Wizards. But they're just a game behind Indiana for the 5th seed. So as far as I'm concerned, you definitely got to take advantage of these games and see if you can get up on the Indiana Pacers. That would be super. So. All right. So, excuse me. So, we're going to just kind of go through these. I'm going to say let's go by position. So, let's start with the quarterbacks because this is where things, I think, maybe I'm just a hater. Maybe I'm just mean. And these are not every move. I'm not going to detail every single move. Just the moves that made me go, oh, I didn't expect that. So the first move that I definitely did not expect, Geno Smith traded to the Las Vegas Raiders for a 2025 third-round pick. Now, anybody who's listened to the show and heard me talk about the Seahawks over the past year or in the pick'em, I've said I just don't know how much more the Seahawks have with Geno Smith. He's given you a nice couple of years, but you just have not really been able to take that step with him. I thought it was time for them to move on from him. And so that basically tells you what I think of him. I don't think he is this elevating quarterback at this point. I think he had a nice couple of Cinderella seasons where he kind of came out of nowhere, played at a Pro Bowl level. People thought he was basically just a total bust, but Pete Carroll showed that he had an ability to utilize him in the right way. Now, the thing that makes this interesting is that the Vegas Raiders coach is Pete Carroll. So you reunite Geno Smith with the last coach or you reunite Pete Carroll with the last quarterback he played with. Maybe it works. I mean, you have very little weapons in Vegas outside of not Ladd McConkey. He's in the Chargers. Oh my gosh, what's his name? The other Georgia boy. Oh my gosh. What is his name? That stupid tight end. Oh my gosh, what is his name? Hold on, now I gotta look him up. Raiders tight end. Not tight ends. Tight end. Oh my gosh, what is his name? Oh my gosh, Brock Bowers. That's his name. Outside of Brock Bowers, Amir Abdullah. I don't know who else is even on the Raiders. So, look. Is he better than Aiden O'Connell? Yes. What does that do for you? I mean, look, Brock Bowers is a very, very good tight end. He is a future all-pro caliber tight end. He is that good. But, you're going to need a little bit more than just him for Geno Smith to take you to that next level. And my fear is, for the Raiders, is that they're kind of in no man's land where right now this quarterback class is not all that deep. You got Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, a couple other guys that maybe you think you could develop in a couple of years. And maybe that's the thought. Maybe they give up their third round pick. Maybe they're going to take a quarterback here in this first round. Maybe they take Shedeur Sanders. I feel like Shedeur Sanders was made in a lab to be a Las Vegas Raider. So I think that'd be very funny if they take him. But look, I just don't know how many weapons you have. I don't know if he's going to be Geno Smith of a couple of years ago. I'm telling you, I just don't see it. I don't see it. At least not now. The other big quarterback movement, speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, Sam Darnold goes to the Seahawks on a 3-year, $110.5 million signing. So a lot of people are saying, wow, he lost a lot of money. Yeah, I suppose he did. But what is Seattle exactly doing? Because when they traded Geno Smith, and we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to the offensive players, when we get to DK Metcalf, it kind of felt like Seattle was moving towards, okay, we need to just kind of tank a little bit. We need to just go through a little bit of a rebuild, out with the old, in with the new, that sort of thing. I thought maybe they were going to, maybe trade up, get a quarterback. Who knows? Instead, they signed Sam Darnold. Now, the problem is you already traded your best wide receiver in DK Metcalf. You saw the end of the season where Sam Darnold just completely fell apart, where, he blew his chance to win the division against the Lions. He got embarrassed against the Rams in the playoffs. I understand that he had a pretty incredible season, all things considered, but he doesn't have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison in Seattle. He doesn't have Aaron Jones. He doesn't have, the defense that Minnesota put up last year. I don't know. This feels like the kind of move that gets a GM fired. I know that might seem kind of extreme, but this just I know it's not an albatross. It's not 5 years. It's not, $200 million. They didn't make him the highest paid quarterback in league history. I understand. But if he just makes them a little bit better or a little bit worse, not totally terrible, not number 1 overall pick worse, where maybe Archie Manning or any of these guys that might be in the draft class next year. I don't know, man. It just seems like a weird move. That's just me. Now, speaking of weird moves, the Jets, they have a new quarterback, technically, and his name is Justin Fields. He signs a 2-year, $40 million deal, and I hate Justin Fields. I'm a Lions fan, obviously. I think Justin Fields sucks. I think he's terrible, and frankly, so does the rest of the NFL. Because look, if you don't end up with a really good team, or if you don't end up with a team that is solid in its foundation, I don't see that the rest of the league values you that highly. And furthermore, 2 years, $40 million is not really a whole lot to invest in the quarterback position. It feels like a stopgap. It feels like we have one of your old wide receivers, Garrett Wilson. You have some natural chemistry there, but if you suck, whatever, we'll just find your replacement in the draft or potentially another offseason. I the problem that I have with this is I understand you have to put somebody at the quarterback position. I do. I understand. But wouldn't you just be better off just drafting a quarterback? And maybe they will. Again, maybe they just draft the quarterback and they have Justin Fields and, again, Cam Ward basically battling it out for that spot. He's a big name. I think people remember him because, he runs around like a chicken with his head cut off, but he can't throw a ball if he had Peyton Manning's arms. And he does not have very much vision as a quarterback. He's just not very good. Okay. He's a typical Ohio State Buckeye quarterback where he's just not very good in the pros. He's just not. So, okay. I mean, I don't know if this is Aaron Glenn motivated. Obviously, he had to deal with Justin Fields on the defensive side back when he was in Detroit. And Justin Fields did look pretty good on a lot of those games where he played us. And, even, the 2023 year when we went on the road and the Bears beat us to hell and back. I don't know. Maybe Aaron Glenn sees something in him, some sort of, leadership characteristic. I don't know. But again, it's not very much money. It's just kind of an interesting move. I didn't put this here also, but Kenny Pickett got traded to the Browns. Obviously, the former first-round pick to the Steelers. Then he wins the Super Bowl as a backup for the Eagles. And now he's on the Browns. So you can add Pickett to the name on the endless quarterback jersey of the Cleveland Browns. Honestly, it is kind of ridiculous. That whole jersey. I mean, they have had so many quarterbacks. None of them have worked. Really, none. Outside of Baker Mayfield for a year. That's pretty much the only real quarterback. Certainly the only real quarterback success they've had in my lifetime. But yeah, I didn't mention it or I didn't put it in the show notes, but I figured I'd mention it. And then finally, I believe this is finally. I hope I didn't miss any. Let me just double check. Josh Allen signs a 6-year extension. MVP. He's an elite quarterback. I got nothing more to say about that. And yeah, okay. So the last quarterback move, Daniel Jones, the former Minnesota Viking backup. People forget he got picked up by the Minnesota Vikings. He signs with the Colts on a 1-year deal. Now, if this tells me anything, it doesn't tell me a whole lot about Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones is terrible. And so any information that could have been learned about Daniel Jones has already been learned. But what it does tell me the Colts don't trust Anthony Richardson, and nor should they, because Anthony Richardson is awful. Okay, like this is one of those like the Anthony Richardson pick at the time I thought was stupid, and I know a lot of people get just enamored by this arm strength. They get enamored by these, nobody wants to miss out on the next Josh Allen, right? But the problem is when you suck at Florida, when you're not winning games at Florida, what makes you think he's just going to turn it on, especially for an organization like Indianapolis that has not gone over the loss of Andrew Luck? Like, they are, for lack of a better phraseology, for lack of a better analogy, they're the AFC version of the New Orleans Saints. They are a lost franchise, which sucks. I always kind of like the Colts, Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy. The Colts were always one of those teams that I can enjoy. They got solid jerseys. I always thought their logo was pretty, it's not the most imaginative, but it's solid logo. But man, they're just in purgatory. They need to just shut it all down. They need to trade everybody. Just go full tank mode, just full on tank mode, because Anthony Richardson's not him. And unfortunately, they're probably going to win 6-7 games again next year. And especially, it doesn't help that their division sucks. Jacksonville is a dumpster fire, and they've done absolutely nothing in free agency outside of letting Christian Kirk go. It's bad. It's bad. Now, speaking of, I guess we should talk about it because now it's skill position time. I did just mention this. I'm about to talk about it. Christian Kirk gets traded to the Texans for a 2026 7th rounder. Christian Kirk I think he was better than people expected him to be in Jacksonville. But obviously, the league does not particularly view him that highly because all it took was a 2nd round pick or 7th round pick next year to, move him. He's really not all that good anymore. I suppose you could say the Texans wide receiver room got a little bit deeper, but frankly, he's a wide receiver 3 or 4 in their room. You got Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Mechie. That's probably, he probably slots in at 4 or 5 if he makes the team at all. To be perfectly, you never know with these guys, but it is what it is. Now, speaking of trades that are confusing, DK Metcalf, first he requested a trade. I was like, okay, well, we'll talk about landing spots for DK Metcalf. And then the Steelers go out and trade for DK Metcalf. Now, the thing is, the Steelers don't really have a quarterback because Russell Wilson is awful. Russell Wilson is totally cooked. He's as cooked can be. But they go out and they get DK Metcalf. And it makes it all the weirder. We'll get to it in a second. Najee Harris walks in free agency. So you get rid of Justin Fields. You're done with Justin Fields. Okay, fine. I'm fine with that. I don't know if Russell Wilson is coming back. You didn't go out and get Sam Darnold. You didn't. You made no attempt for Geno Smith, obviously. 2 quarterbacks that did get moved. But then you go out and you get DK Metcalf. So now your wide receiver room is DK Metcalf, who is, a good receiver, but a little bit of, he gets a lot of attention. He's kind of like a lower tier Dennis Rodman, make a basketball analogy. And George Pickens. That seems like the Steelers are, walking around blind and they don't even know it. And it doesn't make it better that they gave him a 5-year extension, $150 million. I like DK Metcalf. He's a really good wide receiver. But you're bringing in the chaotic energy now of another diva wide receiver and don't really have a quarterback. I don't know. It would make more sense to me. Let's say they did go out and get Geno Smith. Okay, Metcalf already has that relationship with Geno. There's already some chemistry. Actually, it was DK. DK was there when Russell was still there, right? Pretty sure. Pretty sure he was. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this is the right move for the Steelers. Again, they're just so mid, and they've been so mid for such a long time. At a certain point, you got to just give up. Just like Tomlin, retire and fire whoever the GM is and just start over. Like, it's not working, evidently. It hasn't been working for the past 5-6 years at this point. So, moving along then to some other skill players. I already mentioned it, or maybe I didn't mention it. Aaron Jones, he re-signs with the Vikings, 2 years, $20 million. Solid running back. I thought he was a pretty good signing to begin with for the Vikings before. Bring him back on a 2-year deal, $10 million a year. I think it makes sense. The running back position is certainly a lot more valuable than a lot of teams thought before, especially if you're sort of in a quarterback unknown situation like the Vikings are, with J.J. McCarthy presumably taking over. I think it's a solid move. I like Aaron Jones. I got nothing more to say about that. Now, this move I was a little confused on, especially given the news regarding Cooper Kupp. Devontae Adams to the Rams on a 2-year, $46 million deal. I'm sorry. I'm out on Devontae Adams at this point. With Vegas, it was one thing because he was good, but Vegas was terrible. But then you go to the Jets and following Aaron Rodgers, and you're just not there. You make very little impact as a player. And now you're going to an aging Matthew Stafford, who's still good. Don't get it twisted. He's still good, but, it comes at you fast when you're a quarterback. And then on top of that, we'll see, but Cooper Kupp might just straight up get cut. So your wide receiver room is basically going to be Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams and Robert Woods. Is he still on the team? I don't actually know. I actually don't know if Robert Woods is on. I don't think he is, but whoever else is on the team, I don't know. That move to me, that does not, it doesn't stir a lot of confidence. It's like Devontae Adams is a name. Like Devontae Adams of 4 years ago, yeah, that's a scary move. Devontae Adams of 2026, well, gonna be 2026, I should say. No, I just don't think it's there anymore. It feels like a DeAndre Hopkins kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, the name is big, but the player is not who he was 3-4 years ago. Then, let's see, moving along, Chris Godwin re-signs with the Bucs on a 3-year, $66 million deal. Solid move. Chris Godwin, probably the best receiver on that Bucs team outside of Mike Evans, but Mike Evans, a little long in the tooth. Who knows how much longer he's got. I like Chris Godwin. Solid player, solid receiver. No complaints there. The Chargers signed Najee Harris to a 1-year, $9.5 million deal. I wish Seth was here. I'd love to hear his reaction to it. The Chargers adding a little bit to their offense. They definitely could use it. Gus Edwards last year, it didn't do much. So bring in Najee. I think there's something there. It's hard to say because with the Steelers, his rookie year, you kind of felt like, oh, maybe they got something. And then he just never really grew from that. But maybe, we'll see what the Chargers end up doing with the offensive line. Perhaps they add more into the draft. Who knows? Maybe it works out for him. Maybe a little bit of a change of scenery, a prove-it deal for Najee. It's a low risk, high reward. I like the move. I do. So, yeah, I got nothing more to say about that. And, yeah, so now that's it for the skill position, offensive guys. Now let's get into the defense. So I did already mention it. Max Crosby staying in Vegas, 3-year, over $100 million deal. Knew it. He was the highest paid edge player until he wasn't, because not right after that, Myles Garrett re-signs with the Browns, 4 years, $40 million a year, highest paid edge player, highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Both those guys are elite. Of course, they ended up staying with their teams. I think it was pretty much a pipe dream that any of them were going to be traded, or either of them was going to be traded. And speaking of trades, Trey Hendrickson, I already mentioned it. He requests a trade. Or he doesn't request a trade. He's given permission to seek a trade. Again, I I don't see these kind of guys moving. I really don't. And it's not that I don't like. Of course, we already did the segment on the Lions. Of course, I want Trey Hendrickson. I just don't think he's going to go anywhere. So it's reality, okay, versus Mike's fantasy dream, okay. Like Mike's fantasy is Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson, and Max Crosby are all on the same team, and it's the Detroit Lions. But Mike's reality says none of that is going to happen. None of that. Not a single part of that. Also, I wanted to point this out. Joey Bosa gets released by the Chargers and then picked up by the 49ers. Pair up the Bosa brothers. Look, Joey Bosa was a heck of a player back in the day, but he just can't stay healthy. He's certainly past his prime. There's a reason that San Francisco picked him up, and that's because of his last name. That he's really not that good of a player anymore. Well, I shouldn't say. When he's on the field, he can be a fine player, but, he's just hurt all the time. He fell down the stairs, and his paper bones or his glass bones and paper skin tears every single day. Not great. Not great to be Joey Bosa. Next, we have Khalil Mack staying with the Chargers on a 1-year deal, $18 million fully guaranteed. Yeah, Khalil Mack, he was a guy that I would have been interested in going after if I were the Lions. Obviously, he is out of the picture, and he might have never actually been in the picture. Wants to stay in LA. I think it's a solid move. Keep him in LA. He's a very good player and still has, some quality football left in him, but it's a low risk, high reward kind of thing for LA. So good move there for the Chargers. And finally, I believe this is the final move. I got to point this out just because it is kind of funny in a way. CJ Gardner-Johnson gets traded for Kenyon Green, a guard from the Texans, and a 2026 pick swap. Now, the thing is, you're probably wondering, who is Kenyon Green? Because I don't know who he is. Well, Kenyon Green is a former first-round pick, offensive lineman, obviously I already mentioned he's guard, for the Houston Texans. I've got to be honest, I don't really understand this move. And, I'm not a football expert. I'm not a GM. I don't watch a lot of Texans or Eagles football for that matter. But typically, I don't get rid of a guy I don't get rid of good secondary pieces when I've already going to lose Darius Slay, presumably. And you're already losing pieces on the defense. Josh Sweat is gone. I don't know. So maybe it says more about CJ Gardner-Johnson. So my thing is, I am waiting for the day for CJ Gardner-Johnson to say that actually I've always hated Philly, regardless. Despite that other time when I said I hated Philly and they sucked when I came to Detroit, and now I hate Philly again. This guy has gone from he was on the Saints, then Philly, then Detroit, then Philly again, and now he's in Houston. There's a reason he can't stay with a team for more than a year. I just don't think teams want to deal with him. And I think it might just basically be a personality thing, because as far as being a player, he's a pretty good player, but, he just something about him just rubs locker rooms and teams the wrong way. And I really wanted him to work out here in the Lions with Detroit, but it was a bad end, and I think Campbell had enough, basically. And he didn't even play that many games because he was hurt most of the season. But, yeah. So that's that for the NFL. Obviously, more moves could be coming here. I mean, just earlier in the show, we had the DeAndre Hopkins news drop, but I'm keeping an eye on the cellular telephone just in case there is any, news that immediately breaks. But for the most part, that's the focus. That's the NFL offseason so far. Obviously, more stuff will happen as we go. Oh, I forgot Marcus Smart was on the Wizards. Pistons are currently up 50-37 right now. Oh boy, there's a little bit of John going on. Who the heck is that? Look at Ron Holland. He's doing a little bit of smack talking. Is that Marcus Smart that they're pulling away? Boy, he really needs to change his name because he needs to be Marcus Dumb. Like, Marcus not that intelligent. Oh, yeah. And I like Marcus. I thought he was going to be a lot better for the Grizzlies, but man, what is he doing? I don't know what's going on. The TV is muted. I'm not a good lip reader, so this is quite the altercation. All right, so I had to go through the NFL news all at once there because now I got to get angry. I got to get angry 2 times. All right, on 2 different segments, I got to get angry, and I hate that I got to get angry, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So the question is, what do I get angry about? What do I get angry about first? Okay. You know what? We'll do it just in the order that I wrote it. So, last night, the Red Wings lost their 6th straight game. 6 in a row. That is almost as much as they've had in terms of winning streak. That, if they lose tomorrow against the Buffalo Sabres, that would match their highest total win streak of the year. Here's the thing, all right? I didn't put this in the notes, but yesterday's game was the epitome of the Steve Yzerman, the Yzer plan being a complete and utter farce. So last night, they played the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Ottawa Senators in the standings, let me just take a look right now. They are currently in the top wildcard spot. They are a grand total of 5 points ahead of you now, thanks to that win. And they made some moves recently and in the offseason. So, in the game, the first goal is scored by some guy named David Perron. Now, for those of you who are observant and know a little bit about hockey history, David Perron spent a couple of years with the Detroit Red Wings. He was an assistant captain. He was a vet on the team. He's former Stanley Cup champion with the St. Louis Blues. He was, generally speaking, a pretty respectable goal scorer, not an elite player. Obviously, sort of past his prime if he really had one. Not an elite player, but of course, in the one game that we have to play the Senators, he comes out and he scores a goal. 1-0 Sens. Okay. Then, Dylan Larkin, I believe, ties it up. And you're like, all right, we're back in it. Okay. 1-1. The game is 1-1 throughout most of it. Now, the shots on goal. Let me see if I could get the actual stats here. Box score. Hopefully, maybe this does not tell me the shots on. Here we go. The shots on goal was pretty incredibly one-sided in favor of the Red Wings. 49 shots on goal, 23 shots on goal for the Senators. So anyway, we're tied 1-1, all right? Late in the game, Mo Sider gets a power play, and the Senators score on the power play. Who scores the goal? Well, none other than the man himself, Dylan Cousins. Dylan Cousins in a power play goal. Now, granted, both of the goals for Ottawa were on the power play, with David Perron's, obviously, his 4th goal of the year. And Dylan Cousins. That's interesting. So, I seem to remember Dylan Cousins. I don't think he played for Ottawa going into the. Oh, that's right. He didn't. He actually played for the Buffalo Sabres, and he was a name that I had brought up in passing, not necessarily that you have to go get him. He was a name that I thought, hey, maybe the Red Wings go after this guy. And he goes ahead and gets the game-winning goal. But then I've thought, well, wait a minute. Okay, forget the 2 goals. Okay, 2 goals is not that much. How is it that we only had 1 goal? Who was in net for the Ottawa Senators? I was going to say the Ottawa Sabres. The Ottawa Senators, you might be asking. Well, it was some guy by the name of. Hold on, I'm blank. I want to get his name right. Excuse me. Some guy by the name of Linus Ulmark. Well, that's interesting. So if I just go ahead and pull up Linus Ulmark's little page here on NHL.com, well, that's interesting because I thought Linus Ulmark paid for the Boston Bruins. That's odd. And then now this is his first year with the Senators. So, in other words, he's an off-season addition. So let me get this straight. Against the Ottawa Senators, you had a player we let walk, score a power play goal on us. A player we opted not to trade for, presumably, score a goal on us. And a goalie we opted not to trade for or go out and, I think it was a trade, go out and get in the offseason, goalie us. Go for 48 out of 49 saves on us. If this is not the epitome of the Yzer plan, of the Steve Yzerman administration for the Detroit Red Wings, I don't know what is. Because I'm sorry, I'm out. I'm done. I'm done with Steve Yzerman. I'm done with the excuses. I'm done with the just wait until X comes up. Just wait until, Carter Mazer, who gets hurt immediately after coming into the game. Who could have seen that coming? Just wait until until Steve Yzerman really can cook. So I just got a question for any of the Yzerman slappies and homers that are still left out there. Because I don't know how you could be left out there. What's it going to take? What is it going to take? Like, what do the Red Wings have to do? Do they have to lose all 82 games? Do they have to, lose the entire month of March? Do they have to have, blown a 7-game series in the stand? Like, what is it that they have to do before you realize, wait a minute, Steve Yzerman kind of sucks. Like, not as a player. His player, he was great. As a GM. Because you start to think, hold on, this roster, when you really look at it, who is responsible for how this roster made it this way? Well, you have Lucas Raymond leading the team in points with 66, which is good. It's a little more than a point a game. You have Dylan Larkin as your captain. He's got 56 points. Now, I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but if Dylan Larkin is your captain, if Dylan Larkin is tasked with being the leader on your team, you're not going to win a Stanley Cup. Period. You're just not. Okay? He just is not the guy. Okay? If he was on any other playoff caliber team right now, he would not be on the first line. That is a fact. Okay? If he was on Washington, he wouldn't be on the first line. If he was on Toronto, he wouldn't be on the first line. If he was on Edmonton, wouldn't be on the first line. Need I go on? If he was on Dallas, he wouldn't be on the first line. If he was on blanking on them, what's their names? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. The Panthers wouldn't be on the first line. The Devils, he just is not that guy, okay? So, let's forget about let's just get over this fantasy that the hometown kid Dylan Larkin is going to save us, okay? Because I got to tell you, the amount of times I've seen comments of people saying, well, Steve Yzerman didn't win his first cup until he was 30. It's a little bit of a slight difference, I think, between Dylan Larkin and Steve Yzerman. You think maybe there's just like a teeny tiny little bit. It's a teeny tiny little bit of difference. Okay. Then I go down the rest of the roster. And you got DeBrincat, good player. I like the move. You got Kane. Okay, he's a fine player. And you got Moritz Seider. And then basically you got everybody else. Basically, you got a ragtag group of guys that pretty much nobody wants and pretty much nobody asked for. Vladimir Tarasenko utterly sucks. JT Compher is awful. Andrew Copp, he's hurt, but when he was healthy, you wouldn't know it. Jonathan Berggren is quite possibly one of the most weirdly overrated prospects. I remember him constantly being talked about. Where's Jonathan Berggren? But he's not very good. That's the fact. Okay. Then you got your Eric Gustafsons of the world, the Ben Sherratts of the world, your the Justin Halls of the world. This roster that was constructed over 6 years by Steve Yzerman is so utterly awful. Okay? And let me put some of this terribleness into perspective. From the late 60s, from the late 1960s to the early 80s, the Detroit Red Wings were known as the Dead Things. Okay? They were awful. They made it to the playoffs 2 times. Their longest playoff drought was 7 years, over half a decade, almost an entire decade. Do you know what your playoff drought is right now? 9. If you don't make it this year, which I suspect you will not, if you do not make it this year, it will be 9 years since the Red Wings last made the playoffs. I believe 10 years since they last won a series. Probably, maybe even a little more. I don't actually know. But my goodness, like this Red Wings team, this era is beyond saving. Okay, like we're talking about an era where your highlight is Dylan Larkin. I'm sorry, it's just not working out. And to all the Yzerman people, can you please point? What is it that's giving you hope? What is it that's letting you hold on to this idea that the Red Wings that Steve Yzerman is going to turn it around? I got a bit of a newsflash for you. Steve Yzerman got us in this mess. Like, if Steve Yzerman's name was, I don't know, Troy Weaver or Al Avila or Bob Quinn or Matt Millen or any of these terrible GMs that any other team in the city of Detroit has had, he would have been fired. But his name is Steve Yzerman. And because his name is Steve Yzerman, nobody is allowed to say anything mean about him, despite the fact that he's made maybe one good pro move, despite the fact that most of his draft picks aren't even in the NHL, including a goalie that ostensibly is supposed to be the savior, but not according to Steve Yzerman. You want to know why I think that? Because Steve Yzerman believes that Peter Mrazek, at age 100, having one of the worst stretches of hockey he's ever had, he thinks that he is an improvement in net and that he will help the team. And we're going to be paying him another $4 million next year to have a goalie tandem, presumably, of Cam Talbot and Peter Mrazek. And I got to hear about, you're going to be sorry in 2030 when we're finally competitive. You're going to be sorry once, Nate Danielson becomes Gordie Howe. Let me tell you something. If I had a nickel, just a nickel, or even, you know what? If I had a penny for every prospect that I was told about, I'd be a rich man. All right? I've never heard a team get so high on their own supply of guys. Look, you want to say that Axel Sandin Pellikka has the makings to be a good defenseman in the future? Yeah, maybe he does. There's only one problem. He's playing in Sweden. He's not in the NHL. And if he was so good, if he was far and away the most great, amazing, perfect defenseman, okay, he'd be here. He would be here. He would not be in Sweden. If he was this all-star, he's never going to, he's going to be Nick Lindstrom 2.0. He would be here. Now, that's not fair to him because he's got to have time to develop. He's got to have time to play at the level, to play at a pro level and get acclimated to that speed. But if you think you're just going to pick off Axel Sandin Pellikka, who probably won't even be on the team until 2 years from now, maybe you get him next year. And then you got to give him a little bit of time because it takes some time for these guys to learn the NHL level. Like, we're talking about just making the playoffs. We can't even do that. And you're telling me that, Danielson and Pellikka and, all of these guys, the Carter Mazers, and that they're just going to waltz in and bring us to the promised land? It's not going to happen. All right. And you know what's funny? This is the second year in a row I've had to make this kind of segment that I've had to talk about this. At a certain point, it's deja vu all over again. At a certain point, maybe the guy putting the groceries together is to blame. Not the chef, not the rotten tomatoes. Maybe it's the guy buying the rotten tomatoes. So, look, I'm out on Steve Eisman. I think by the end of this season, if not right now, you just let him go. We're not winning with him. I don't think we're gonna win. It doesn't make any difference to me. We're not winning with him, so we might as well lose without him. We might as well. If you can cite to me something other than his draft picks, and even then, if you're citing draft picks, as far as I'm concerned, you're losing. And one last thing. Brad Holmes took over a Lions team in 2020 going into 2021. That was one of the worst teams in the league. Had absolutely no talent on the roster. By year 3, that team was a half away from a Super Bowl. Already had won the division. Okay? All right. Scott Harris took over one of the worst teams in baseball. Awful farm system. Very little hitting prospects. Pretty much a hodgepodge of guys with 2 seemingly pretty bad contracts on the books, and Eduardo Rodriguez and Javier Baez. By year 2, he got that team to the playoffs with some savvy trades, some decent offseason moves, and some solid player development. And the icing on the cake, Trajan Langdon took over a Pistons team that quite literally had the worst year ever as a franchise and had a roster that was made up of centers and players with no shown ability to that point to shoot the ball. And right now, they're on the verge of potentially being the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference and make and host a playoff series. I understand that hockey is not basketball, hockey's not basketball, baseball, or football. I understand. But you do not get 6 years to make the playoffs. I don't care if you never win the lottery. I don't care if, some guys get hurt. I don't care if you had to fire your head coach. You don't get 6, 7, 8 years to just make the playoffs. It's ridiculous. And I'm sorry, we can cut our time, we can cut it loose now, or we can waste more of our time in the years to come. So you can hold out hope that maybe this next offseason he's finally going to make the right moves. Probably won't. He hasn't made the right moves since he's gotten here. So, Steve Eisman, don't let the door hit you out on the back. On the way you're. Well, you know what? Let me start that over. Steve Eisman, don't let the door hit you on the way out, because I'm just done. And you can, hockey fans, you can say I don't know what I'm talking about. Hey man, I've been right the whole way. I've been consistently correct on this. Every year that you set some sort of a barrier, he does not reach that barrier, and you just move it along. I, on the other hand, have held him to a standard that's been consistent. So, if you want to hold on to hope that the guy who shot the overtime goal against St. Louis back in the day is gonna bring you back the old Stanley, I like to live in La La Land too sometimes, but La La Land is not a real place. I do not want to go to Rainbow Land, and you can't make me. That's the segment. All right. So, now that segment's over. All right. So, I realize I say all right so a lot. Right now the Pistons, by the way, for those of you who are keeping track, they're up 66-49. Looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good. Oh, what a block. Oh my gosh. Oh, I thought that was going to go in. Oh man. That half-court heave, that looked pretty good off the rim, but Jalen Durham with a heck of a block. Look at this. He just murdered that basketball. Who was it that took that shot? Was that it was Asar Thompson from about the 3-point line on the other side of the court. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. So the Pistons up 66-49. Jeez, look how tall Jalen Duren is. Poor Natalie Kerwin has to he's got to like bend down all the way just to be able to hear her. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. All right. So let's talk a little college basketball. So originally, this segment was going to primarily focus on Michigan State and their Big Ten championship win. They're outright regular season Big Ten champions. So that was great. I mean, we had the live reaction less than a week ago. They go out and they have a comeback win against Iowa on the road. Really fun, exciting game for Michigan State. They win the Big Ten outright. Then on Sunday, icing on the cake, they go and they blow the doors off of that other school, Michigan. And I thought that was basically what I was going to talk about. Going to talk about how, Tom Izzo won Coach of the Year. Jace Richardson was on third team All Big Ten. He was on the first team All Freshman Big Ten. You had so many, deep. Yeah, it's such a deep team, and now we're on to the Big Ten tournament. And can Michigan State, sort of double up on their Big Ten title and get it both in the regular season and in the conference tournament? And then you kind of move into March Madness mode. And where does Michigan State stand in the seeding? Are they a 3 seed? Are they a 2 seed even? If they win the conference tournament, are they even a 1 seed? But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your persuasion, Michigan just had to do something. They had to get themselves involved in the news cycle. Now, here's the thing. I was watching this game live, and I was talking to my dad on the phone because the game's basically over. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to lock in. I was talking to my dad. And I'm watching the game, and the game's over. Michigan State's shooting free throws. They're subbing the seniors out. They're doing the whole, kissing the Spartan logo at midcourt. And then all of a sudden, there's like a scuffle. I was like, oh, okay. Maybe somebody said something or whatever. I wasn't really paying that much attention. But then I understand. Then I figure out what actually happened. I get the whole storyline. So a couple of Michigan players, one of which is named Fat Fat, which your name is Fat Fat. I am just inherently going to not respect you. I'm sorry. I don't care how good at basketball you are, but evidently you really weren't that good at basketball because you had like 2 points. Either way, some man named Fat Fat, and I don't know what the other guy's name was. I guess we'll call him Skinny Skinny. So Fat Fat and Skinny Skinny decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to stand right in the middle of the court so that Michigan State can't do the thing that they've done for 30 years where they sub out the seniors in a game that's over because we're up by double digits with 30 seconds left, and we're going to kiss we're just going to get in their way so they can't have their little ceremony. And I got to tell you, this is by far the most butter soft, sore loser, sour grapes way to deal with a loss. And yet, I'm not surprised at all because this is typical Michigan. You know what? This is it's amazing, the irony of all of this. For one, I seem to remember a altercation in the middle of a sporting event where the game was over that Michigan fans got all bent out of shape. Oh my gosh, look at poor Ohio State. Oh my gosh, they're so triggered that we planted our flag in their field. Oh my gosh. Well, hold on. Just a second. Just one little minute. So when you do it, it's, well, just beat us. Well, if you don't like it, why don't you just win the game? Huh? You ever think of that, funny guy? You ever think of that? You ever think of that, Buckeyes? Huh? Why don't you just beat us? And then Michigan State, well, they do, after already having blown them out in their own house, and a great extension to Dusty May, by the way, going 2-4 down the stretch after getting signed. Great extension, really working out well so far. They go out and they do the exact same thing that Ohio State did, only one little teeny tiny difference. This wasn't us rubbing it in. This might come as a shock to Michigan because they don't have any traditions in college basketball because the only thing of note they ever did was have a team full of players who did not win any national championships other than, embarrassing themselves and calling timeout when they didn't actually have a timeout. we actually have traditions at Michigan State for college basketball. And one of those is at the end of a game, obviously the game, again, I don't need to reiterate, the game was over. We were up 17 points with 30 seconds to go. I don't know if you're aware, there's no 17-point play you can make in 37 seconds. So what we do is we intentionally foul Michigan so that they go to the free throw line. And then Tom Izzo can sub out the seniors, 3 of which there were, where, it was Frankie Fiddler and Shimon Zapawa and Jaden Akins as the last one. And all 3 of them go to kiss the floor. Now, I will be totally honest with you. As a neurotic kind of weirdo, I don't really get the kissing. Like, I would not kiss the floor. All right. I just wouldn't do it. All right. But the whole reason for the tradition is, back in the day, when the Fab Five was a thing, they rubbed their behinds on the Spartan logo. And so as a retort to that, we showed that actually we respect our logos. We're not going to allow you to defame it. We're going to show it reverence and respect. And it's been a long-standing tradition. We've done it against pretty much every Big Ten team. If we're winning the game, the guys go out during the game. But if we're losing the game, this becomes a shock because Michigan doesn't win a whole lot in the Breslin. But if we're losing the game, we actually keep our seniors in because usually those are some of your best players. And when you're losing a game, again, Michigan knows a whole lot about losing games. You have to keep your best players in. See, like Michigan in this past game, they didn't actually have to sub out anybody because they were losing most of the time. But we, on the other hand, we actually had a lot of chances to sub out guys. Probably maybe sometime around when we were up like 20 points at the half, or 20 points in the second half, or really most of the game. All of this is to say that Michigan acted like a bunch of sore losers, which is as typical as one would expect from Michigan because, they love to dish it out, but they just can't take it, apparently. When they lose, it's a national travesty. It's not that they didn't play well enough. It's not that they didn't have the right fight. It's not that they didn't have the right coaching. It's not that they weren't prepared. It's that everything else in the world is wrong. Everything else is wrong. You must have done something that was against the rules or something was unfair. And everybody's being so mean to poor Michigan. We just can't catch a break. And that's how it is. That's just like, and now you have to deal with people, real people, including head coach Dusty May, trying to make the case that, I didn't have any idea. I didn't know this was a tradition. It's taking so long. Why can't they do it after the game? Okay. First of all, okay, we're winning the game. The game is over. Okay. You want to say after the game? The game ended in the second half. The game was over way before then. And furthermore, we have done this again against countless teams in the Big Ten. We've done it against Illinois. We've done it against Purdue. We've done it against Indiana. We've done it against pretty much everybody. Anybody that we end the year with, we've done it with. No problems, no issues, no brawls, nobody standing on the court. And if somebody was, excuse me, can you just, get off the, my bad, I didn't realize, I'm sorry, wasn't even paying attention where I was. Okay, no problem. But no, I want to stand here. I'm going to stand here and sit around. Now, to all the Michigan fans who don't understand, imagine what you would be thinking if, as Michigan has their little football tradition where they jump up and they hit the banner, right? Imagine if Ohio State just like stood right in the middle of it. Wouldn't you be a little perturbed? Wouldn't you be a little, hey, what the heck are you doing? Everybody knows we do this. Well, there's no rule saying we can't stand. What is there a rule that says we can't stand? No, there's not a rule, but are you stupid? Are you a moron? And so, look, if Dusty May is so willfully ignorant, like there's 2 scenarios potentially, okay? Either scenario number 1, Dusty May truly believed that he could mount a comeback if he put 2 guys right there on the back in half court, down 17 with less than a minute to go. He's going to put 2 guys who combine for 2 total points, 2 more points than you and me. He's going to put those two guys back there in the event that, Michigan can, maybe miss a field goal or miss a free throw intentionally and maybe get the rebound, what have you. Okay. So in that case, Dusty May is an idiot because why is he putting in two guys who barely played and combined for 2 total points if he thinks he can still win the game? So there's that. We could throw that. Or scenario number 2, he is so stupid that despite the fact that the referees told him this was going to happen in this game, and despite the fact that he coached at Indiana for a significant amount of time, a long enough amount of time to be aware of this tradition, and he just totally forgot that it exists, or somehow it just right over his head. He just never noticed it. Coaching in the Big Ten, then coaching now a full year at Michigan. He never even was aware of any sort of thing, which is what he says that he was, but apparently, I don't know, maybe he's got short-term memory because the referees told him about it. So basically, either Dusty May is stupid, or Dusty May is stupid. Or I guess the third option, he's just a lying scumbag and he just wanted to interrupt the scenario because he was sour about the fact that his team laid another egg against Michigan State. One of the three, I got to tell you, I don't think Dusty May is a stupid person. So you tell me which option you think it was. But hey, Michigan State, we're going to be busy raising banners and holding up trophies. Michigan can be busy standing on and defending the Spartan logo. Because apparently, if Michigan showed about half as much fight defending that logo as they did the whole game, maybe they wouldn't be down double digits. Trey Holloman just scored again, by the way. And Jaden Akins just hit another 3. And Michigan State is up $30 billion. So, but again, what would I expect from a school that hasn't won in the Breslin since I was in high school? So, it's tough. I understand, but figured I'd talk about this just because, Michigan just couldn't handle it, I guess. I don't know. That's how it is, in the words of the great Kamala Harris.
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets.
That's right. We're out here in these streets. That's all I got. That's all I have. Meanwhile, Fat.
He's fat!
Fat, and Skinny. That's their names. My name's Fat, and I'm here to say my brain don't work too good today. Anyway. All right. That's pretty much the show. Not pretty much, that is the show. So, if you enjoyed, please hit the subscribe. Please hit the like button. So, obviously, Michigan State Big Ten tournament is going to be kind of in the mix, depending on where that goes schedule-wise. I might live stream the reaction there to see if Michigan State can pull off the tournament win. I don't know what the schedule looks like right now. Michigan State, I don't believe, plays until Friday, I believe, is when they play their first game. So, we'll see about that. Outside of that, not a whole lot to look out for as far as live reactions go. But the closer we get to March Madness, the closer we get to that sort of thing being in play. So, with all of that being said, I do appreciate for anybody for stopping by, listening, and hanging out. Again, hit the like and subscribe button. We'll be back again on Tuesday, next Tuesday, break down all the news of the week. So have a good night, everybody, and I will talk to you all next Tuesday. See ya. Goodbye. See you later.